Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Let me personally thank you for your closing remarks in terms of our relationship. I would repeat them to a word. I want to continue to have that relationship. It's based on many years of working together, and let's do our best to try to restore it as quickly as we can. Two things I want to mention. One is 9/11, and of course, this 24th anniversary brings to mind that fateful morning where I was in the Capitol building and were meeting with Senator Daschle, and we looked at the window down the mall and saw black smoke billowing from the Pentagon and realized something terrible had happened beyond what we'd seen on television in New York. It was just minutes until someone knocked on the door and said, "Vacate the building. We think we're under attack." And of course, there was another plane that we knew was in the sky over Pennsylvania that we thought might threaten the Capitol building or the White House. We weren't sure. But we literally believed our lives were at risk at that moment. Everybody vacated the Capitol building, stood out on the lawn, and didn't know which way to turn. Tourists came up to me because I had a tie on and said, "Do you work here? Where are we supposed to go?" There was no place to go. Thankfully, today, 24 years later, there's a much different attitude toward security and safety on Capitol Hill. But even more important, as far as I'm concerned, was what happened that night when members of the Senate and House, Democrats and Republicans, spontaneously gathered together on the steps of the Capitol and sang "God Bless America." It was a moment I'll never forget because it really reflected an effort to bring this nation together at a time when there was no other way to really solve this problem. I think we were at our best, and I want to salute President George W. Bush, Republican, who stated, I think importantly, within the day or two of the attack, that this was not a war against people in the Muslim faith. It was a faith of peace, as he said, and the people who would corrupt it, as they did on 9/11, should not be allowed to define that religion. That was an important, historic statement. I wish we had that same kind of leadership in both political parties if we ever face another terrible tragedy like that day. Let me say a word about this whole question of U.S. attorneys. I do disagree, Mr. Chairman, with your phrase, unprecedented obstruction. That's what you've characterized the current situation on the calendar. Unprecedented, of course, speaks for itself, that it's never happened before. Let me call to mind that in April 2021, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, then a member of this committee, announced that he would block U.S. attorney nominees on the floor from any state represented by a Democrat on this committee. He held these nominees for 8 months. Senator Cotton finally lifted his hold in December of 2021, only to block U.S. attorneys on the floor again for months beginning in February of 2022. But the one that most of us remember was much more current, and that was when then Senator Vance, now Vice President, announced that he was going to grind the Department of Justice to a halt by requiring long roll calls on every U.S. attorney nominee of Joseph Biden. At that point, we had approved 68 of the 93 U.S. attorney positions in the Biden administration, and that was the end of it. Over an 18-month period of time, Senator Vance held to that position that he would not allow a U.S. attorney to be considered by voice vote or a unanimous vote on the floor. Keep in mind that when President Trump went through his first term in office, every one of his U.S. attorney positions was filled by a voice vote, every one of them. Under Biden, 68 out of 93, and then the Vance approach, which stopped us cold. So to say that holding U.S. attorneys on the calendar is unprecedented, it was done twice by members that we know personally, and that's what we're dealing with now. I don't blame you for that at all. You and I have talked about that, and I think I can safely relay our conversation. We knew that this was going to create a terrible situation sometime in the future, and it has. The good news is, I hope, a conversation I had this morning with one of my colleagues, there is a conversation underway to try to find a bipartisan way out of this mess. That is the best outcome we could hope for, if we can come together in both political parties and agree on moving forward. to have this imposed by a nuclear option, I don't believe is the best way to go, and I've been through that several times. It always comes back to haunt the party that moved it, and that would happen in this situation, I'm afraid, too. So I haven't given up. I hope we can find some bipartisan approach to this, and I hope that we can return to the comedy which used to characterize this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.